Welcome to the Sustainable Dish podcast. I'm Diana Rogers, a real food registered dietitian, author, and sustainability advocate. I co-host this podcast with James Connolly, who was a producer on my film, Sacred Cow. I also founded the Global Food Justice Alliance, an initiative advocating for the inclusion of animal-sourced foods like meat, dairy, and eggs for a more nutritious, sustainable, and equitable worldwide food system. You can check it out and join me at globalfoodjustice.org. Thanks again for listening, and now on to our show. Hey everyone, I'm really excited to let you know about the free community blood sugar challenge that I'm running for the month of February for my followers. You'll learn how to use a continuous glucose monitor, CGM, to find out how food impacts your individual body so that you can make the best choices when it comes to your diet. It was a complete game changer for me, and I recommend CGMs to all of my nutrition clients. I'm partnering with Levels to offer 2 free months when you sign up as a member to get the CGM without a prescription. Just need to visit sustainabledish.com/blood sugar, all one word, and enter your email to get the free ebook, access to the live Zoom calls, and the special offer from Levels. And if you're listening to this after our challenge has ended, you can still get access to my blood sugar challenge ebook and the recorded Zoom calls, plus the special offer from Levels. Learning about how food impacts your blood sugar is valuable information that I think we all should know. Visit sustainabledish.com/blood sugar to sign up. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I am so psyched to have yet again Esther Blum, registered dietitian, awesome friend to me, and new author on the podcast. And we are going to be talking about menopause. So, and I think this is even helpful for men to listen to understand what their partners might be going through. And I'd say first, Esther, I remember I used to work for Whole Foods Market. And when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I remember having an older woman come in who was 60 or so. And I was like, do you want to talk about menopause? And she's like, oh no, we've already gone through that. Like that was, so I didn't even realize when it happened. I didn't know anything about it. Nobody talks about it. It's sort of this taboo thing. And we need to unveil the taboo.
Absolutely. And we need to help women understand how to navigate through, which is why I wrote See You Later, Ovulator, because I was like, this is not taught in medical school. Even in residency, it's really not focused on. And there's 6,000 women on average who go through menopause daily. So be 1.2 billion women in menopause by 2030. And the only solutions typically in a doctor's office for a woman are to either go on the pill, to go on an IUD, to have a hysterectomy, or to just go home and wait it out and suck it up. None of which are really great solutions in the long. I mean, yes, okay, if you're physically suffering with hemorrhagic bleeding and fibroids, and and you're past the point of no return, you may choose to get a hysterectomy and have some relief. But I want to give people the support pieces they need to have in place if they do choose that option, and how to go down that road.
Yeah. And this is something that, is near and dear to my heart. I, through a very stressful last few years, kind of went into early perimenopause and went on hormone replacement and actually was able to work with a functional medicine doctor that guided me through everything that you recommend in the book, in not only taking estrogen and progesterone, but also testosterone. And that is wild
Magic.
Craziness, right? And that is the dominant hormone even for women. And we need to be talking about testosterone replacement too, especially when we think about sarcopenia and just maintaining strength. And so many women that in fact, all of my girlfriends pretty much who are close to me, who are of my age, none of them are on hormone replacement at all.
Mhm.
And so let's talk about some of the, when we can start, because it doesn't have to be like official menopause, even though that's what the doctors are saying. And then also let's talk about like optimal things to do, lifestyle, everything.
Let's
Like go
go.
for it.
Yeah, let's
Give
go.
folks a rundown.
All right. So, first of all, hormones are not a panacea for everything. They are a piece of the pie, but I do address them first because it's such a quality of life issue. I mean, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone support neuroplasticity and cognitive function in the brain. They support really strong, healthy bones. They support maintaining muscle, which women lose the most amount of muscle really during perimenopause and menopause. And they offset the risk of heart disease. And the fact that just that basic information is withheld from women and often ignored or swept under the rug is just, that's what inspired me to write the book, because I was I was like, are you kidding me? This is so egregious. So these are not your mama's hormones, okay? Back in the day, there was the Women's Health Initiative study, which did a huge disservice to 4 decades of women, which is, it was a study design that was so flawed to begin with. It took women who were 10 years postmenopausal and put them on Premarin, which was derived from the urine of pregnant horses. So it was this weirdo synthetic estrogen with no opposing progesterone or testosterone, which, hello, that is not how hormones work in nature. You don't just give high dose or even low dose estrogen without, compatible hormones. Um, and it was synthetically derived. So and the data was not interpreted correctly, which is a huge problem. So the conclusions from that study were that, oh, hormone replacement therapy is going to give you a heart attack. It's going to cause blood clots. It's going to increase your risk of stroke. And basically, you're going to die. Hallelujah. Thank God the North American Menopause Society revisited the study and revamped their position papers in 2018 and 2022 and said, oh, gee whiz, you know what? Bioidentical hormones, which are given in microdoses, by the way, like a fifth of what is given in a birth control pill. So those can actually offset the diseases we spoke about, can give a woman better quality of life, better libido, offset the risk of chronic illness, and they're safe for a minimum of 10 years. And by the way, like, I have women in their 70s in my practice who are like, I am never going off these hormones. And when I do, I start hot flashing and not sleeping. So, it's the research is going to come out more and more to say hormones are safe. The type and delivery system matters, and work with a practitioner. But as long as you're tested and monitored, and you should be tested and monitored 3 to 4 times a year after starting, and work with a good functional medicine, either a doctor or a nurse practitioner, somebody who can prescribe and check your levels, that is imperative. Okay. So that's step one. But beyond the hormones, we really want to look at diet and lifestyle and the role that stress plays in our lives. Okay, so let's just talk about my 3 Meno laws for fat loss. One is, of course, going to be to optimize protein. And ideally, you do want animal protein because it's a much more efficient way to get your protein. If you are plant-based, you're going to have to eat 2 cups of quinoa to get the same amount of protein in a 4-ounce chicken breast. So animal proteins are great, especially when they are regeneratively farmed and raised. And you want to get, the average woman needs about 4 to 6 ounces 3 times a day, or if you intermittent fast, you can have, 7, 8 ounces of protein twice a day. My athletic mamas who are lifting weights can really go way above that as well. So there's, the myths on protein are not supported. They're not going to cause your kidneys to shut down. You're not going to have bone loss if you optimize your protein. Your body does adjust, okay, especially when you're eating a lot of plants with it. That makes a big difference. Number 2 is you want your protein intake to be higher than your carbs. So let's say you track your food on MyFitnessPal or any app, and you're eating 120 grams of protein per day, which is a really great amount. Your carbs figure like around 100 grams to start. If you're very athletic, you're lifting weights, you're doing CrossFit, you're working out hard, then it's more like a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbs. But generally, you always want your protein higher than your carbs because that manages your blood sugar beautifully and enables you to lose fat. But it's enough carbs where your cortisol and your thyroid are supported as well.
Yeah, and let's talk about just really briefly, like I have been really tinkering with my diet over the last year or so, and what worked for me in my 20s and 30s is not the same as what is working for me now, and I actually do better with some carbs because it's managing my cortisol, and I've just found that whatever I can do to keep my cortisol
Yeah,
low is overall the best thing for me, like by far. And I used to be able to go super low carb, like almost no carb. Cannot do that now.
that's right.
And there's a lot of women I see like in these I follow these like carnivore forums just to see what people are chatting about. And the people who are not able to make a super low carb or zero carb diet work are women, middle-aged women.
That's right. And listen, keto works great for about 3 months, or the carnivore diet works great for about 3 months for women at midlife when they're going through hot flashes, because it can really support that. But what happens is your adrenals and your thyroid start to conk out and you become metabolically resistant. You can be more sluggish, more irritable, not sleeping as well. So brings me to my third mental law, which is to have carbs at dinner, which people are like, huh? And some women, I even have having carbs before bed, like honey and salt on a rice cracker. And people think I am nuts, but I'm telling you, when you're not sleeping, right, your cortisol tends to often be very high in the middle of the night. And insulin is antagonistic to cortisol. So if you get a slight bump in insulin, let's say you're having a piece of fish, a baked potato, and some asparagus, right? That white potato will raise your sugars a small amount, and that is enough to tamp down cortisol. So you can have a great night's slumber. Plus, it raises your dopamine and serotonin. And so the cost of not sleeping metabolically is far greater than the cost of having just some carbs, some quality carbs with dinner, but sleeping. It actually corrects your insulin resistance, which is pretty amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think also priorities, shift a little bit from like, I gotta look great in that bathing suit to I wanna feel happy, and I want to feel rested, and I wanna have energy, right? And, that is sort of like the main goal. And when you, do what I notice is when I do add a little bit more carbs in, I have much more energy to move about my day. I don't want to just like take a nap all the time, which is generally how I feel when I'm too low in
Yeah,
carb.
absolutely. Yeah, I have no energy without some carbs. And same, like I'm not ODing on carbs at all. But I'm very mindful of my timing, and we tend to be more insulin sensitive at night anyway than first thing in the morning. So that's all really helpful. And then, lifestyle and stress management is also really key. I mean, and Diana, like you and I have talked about this a lot, we are at the age where we've got teenagers or we're launching them to college, and we have aging parents or ailing parents or parents who are dying. So your career, if you've been working on your career and plugging away for years and years, this is often a time when it's like really taking off because you paid your dues, you're total expert in your field, and so you have all these plates spinning in the air, and this is a time like more than ever to delete those social media apps from your phone, to get actual paper books from the library or buy them online, and to really have like a solid calm bedtime routine, and to unwind and really be mindful of like who's in your life, whose energy you are taking on, and like what you truly want, if you're aligned with your values, like getting all those pieces in place really also is essential for supporting your adrenals, supporting your cortisol. If you're just running around taking care of everybody else. You're not putting that oxygen mask on first. And you can't always put it on first, right? There's crises and there's ebbs and flows. But for the most part, if you develop a spiritual practice, if you can breathe for 10 minutes at night before bed, right? Everyone says, I don't have time during the day. Okay, great. But you have time at night. You have 10 minutes. You can meditate with your kids or your spouse. You can breathe. It doesn't matter if you fall asleep to it, but just get your body in a place of routine and structure where you're breathing and you're just being mindful of that and not the thousand other to-do list things that you have, because most of our chronic illness and struggles with menopause start up in the brain, start up top, and that is what drives our progesterone into the toilet is, and our adrenals. Because the other thing people don't realize about menopause is that your ovarian production of hormones shuts down, and your body, all of a sudden the switch flips, and your adrenals are responsible for just eking out very small amounts of hormones after that. And so if you go in with a really low cortisol curve or like an excessively high cortisol curve, you're going to really struggle in menopause. And just the lifestyle pieces. I mean, breathing's free. You don't have to buy any supplements. You don't have to it's just free. So those
Yeah.
basic
So
things.
let's talk about like some of the symptoms. I can share some of the ones I had. I actually have never experienced a hot
Mm,
flash, but I had other stuff going on with my body. And I wonder if the hot flashes were just because I did have my blood sugar relatively under control, but the cortisol was still super high. But I was like getting MRIs because of massive joint pain, and nobody could
mm,
understand why. My joints were like swelling up. My knees were so bad at points where I couldn't
mm.
walk. I was having some really bad like brain fog, memory issues, huge memory issues. Um, a lot of this stuff just doesn't need to happen. And the more I read about menopause, especially the joint stuff, it doesn't need to be that way, and my symptoms were dramatically reversed once I started supplementing with hormone.
Yes. So, and women get all sorts of hormones, right? They get all sorts of symptoms that are hormone related, pardon me. So, anything from vaginal dryness, low libido, night sweats, irritability, depression, and anxiety is a huge one that I want to address as well. Some women get itchy nose and ears as well, UTIs, breast tenderness, so bloating, weight gain. So all of a sudden, you're like inhabiting this body and you're like, what the hell just happened? I haven't changed my diet. I've gained all this weight, what seems like overnight. I have like 2 sips of alcohol and I'm hot flashing. What's the deal? So the best way to offset these symptoms, right? You do want to do some good testing. I do in my practice. I look at blood tests, but I also look at the Dutch and the GI map to determine your hormone production and how you detox your hormones and the state of your microbiome as well. If you have an inflamed microbiome and you're constantly recycling estrogen, that's going to be a problem, because if you're not detoxing it well in your liver, that will be a problem. Why? Because if you bring hormones into the picture and your detox pathways are off, you're going to feel worse. If your estrogen can surge 30% on any given day, and then if your estrogen surging and you start using hormones too early, like then you can feel worse. So you want to make sure, usually most perimenopausal women I work with go on progesterone first. So progesterone is a natural steroid, which is why it quells that joint inflammation and pain. But it's also nature's chill pill, right? It helps us feel calm and relaxed, helps me not throw my teenage son out of the house. But it also really helps with sleep. And it's a precursor to GABA, which is a really calming neurotransmitter. So a lot of doctors will say, oh, no problem. Just take progestogen. Just take a progestin only pill. That will help your menopause. Sadly, it does not, synthetic progesterone does not work on the neural pathways that bioidentical progesterone does. And so women are being put on antidepressants left and right, and they actually just have a progesterone deficiency and or an estrogen deficiency. So you really want to make sure that you're like getting this checked out. If you've been to doctors and they've put you on the pill and you're feeling like garbage, or you've been written off and just told to go home and wait, get your hormones tested, because that can give you a real window into what you need. Then once women, and again, if you're cycling, if you are very early in perimenopause, right, you can start with chaste tree. Chaste tree naturally raises progesterone. But if you're doing that and that's not making a dent, or you're kind of late stage perimenopause, then you can bring in progesterone either the last 2 weeks of your cycle, or you can, depending on your levels. Plenty of women, like I started progesterone years ago, and I just take it all month long because my levels were just so rock bottom and I wasn't sleeping. And I still cycle, even though I'm totally in perimenopause. It's like not always regular, but I joke it's like Voldemort. The minute I'm like, oh, I haven't had period in a while, I swear it shows up.
No, I'm the same way. You and I are at the same
It's like,
exact
come
stage.
on.
Yeah.
And then, so progesterone, so delivery systems, okay. You can get it orally. You can get it filled at a pharmacy for like $3 or $4 a prescription. It's called Prometrium. It is in a base of peanut oil, so you need to be aware if you have peanut allergies. And it does go through your liver and gut. So if you're a poor metabolizer, you may want to think about a troche, which is like a waxy, it's like a lozenge that dissolves in your mouth under the tongue. And that goes right across the blood-brain barrier. So it's great for sleep. And it bypasses your liver and gut. Next is estrogens. People use them in the form of patches. People use them as creams. And if you're having vaginal dryness and or UTIs, you can use it vaginally too, because estrogen is responsible for collagen production. That's why a lot of us like wrinkle up really quick when we're all of a sudden we have massive skin changes when we go through menopause, and we're like, holy cow, like who's that witch staring back at me in the mirror? And it rebuilds collagen vaginally too, and restores elasticity to the vaginal walls and hydration as well. So those are great delivery systems. And then there's testosterone, which can be given in a cream. A topical cream is a great way to do it. The one form of delivery that I do not recommend are pellets. For those of you who don't know, inserting hormone pellets is a surgical procedure. You have to have an incision made in your skin, and they're kind of a little tunnel dug out, usually in your tush, and then they're dropped in and you're sealed up. And I have seen far more side effects. Some women on my Instagram page swear by their pellets, but most people, and the ones in my practice, like went to a doctor that put pellets in and just had horrible side effects, tremendous weight gain, raging, irritability. Some of them had like such a high libido that their partners were totally afraid and running, and were like, oh my God, this is way too much. But pellets, you really can't regulate the dose at all. Whereas like, anything topical or oral, you can totally change the dose very quickly and easily. So, and it's
Mhm.
such a small, gentle dose. Like no one needs to get pregnant at this age. You don't need to ovulate. You don't need the hormones of a 22-year-old, but you do need a microdose, which is going to offset, the bone loss, the heart disease risk, and the dementia risk as well.
Now, when I went to my OBGYN and I told her what I was taking, and I mentioned the testosterone, her eyes kind of bugged out of her head. And she's a pretty young, open minded OB, or a gynecologist. And so, why? Why aren't they like, why is it kind of okay for estrogen,
Mhm.
progesterone, but like nobody, I was considered off
Yes,
label
you are.
use.
And the FDA does not approve the use of testosterone for women unless it is medically approved or prescribed by your practitioner. It's only approved for men, which is the biggest crop of BS, because, as you mentioned, like testosterone is the most dominant hormone in a woman's body, and it converts to estrogen. So it's so ridiculous. And testosterone, women are so afraid. I'm like, do you understand? You are not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sly Stallone. You're eating like the average woman who comes to me is eating 1,100 calories. I'm like, do you think you even have the caloric intake to build muscle? You could not build muscle if you tried. And they're eating like 60 grams of protein, which is what I would put my dialysis patients on. It's ridiculous. So there's just so much misinformation out there. I too use testosterone. And let me tell you, I was so sick, a year and a half ago, so sick with Lyme and mold. I had like no cortisol curve. Like I was dead. I couldn't lift weights without completely crashing for 2 days after. And when I went on hormones, my cortisol curve came back, and I have played with adrenal supplements. I really can't take a lot. They really mess with my sleep. For years, I have tried every adrenal hormone, every adrenal supplement on the market. And when I went on that testosterone, I'd been on progesterone a long time, slowly added in like really tiny amounts of estrogen. I really don't need a lot, but that testosterone, what a game changer that has been for my life. So, and like my libido too. Oh my gosh, I use it both vaginally and topically, and it's great. Ladies, like, don't, you're a fool if you miss this. You really are.
Yeah, and so, let's talk about some of the concerns that women have, like maybe if they have genetic,
Mm,
histories in
mhm.
their family of breast cancer, and some of the concerns that are
Yes.
legitimate that might be making women nervous to go
Yes,
on
and clotting
HRT.
disorders too. Yes. So that is why I do the Dutch test in particular, because it looks at your methylation patterns. You can also do like 23andMe, or look at your genetic SNPs, your MTFHR gene as well, and just see how you're methylating. As long as you're supporting those pathways, and you check out and you look at how your hormones are metabolizing through your liver and your gut, that significantly decreases your risk of cancer. But obviously, it's always your body, your choice, right? Oh, I always say this to all my clients, your body, your choice. But here's the wild thing. I would say about 10% of my practice is oncological patients, like women who are, they're coming to me because they're having horrible brain fog and depression and vaginal dryness and low libido on either letrozole or tamoxifen. And they're like, no freaking way. I'm scared shitless to go on hormones. I've had many oncologists tell them, you know what, your risk of cancer is low. Like we've done a mastectomy and or a hysterectomy. Like there's nothing to grow on here. And your quality of life at this point outweighs your risk of cancer, because do you want to have severe osteoporosis when you're 60 and have crumbling bones? That's a real quality of life issue, because the largest cause of death in in people over the age of 65 is due to fractures and falls. So it's a real mortality risk. So you have to outweigh, risk versus benefit.
Yeah. One thing I did was I did my 23andMe, and then we pulled it into foundmyfitness.com, which is Rhonda Patrick's website. And she has an awesome tool that will give you a whole bunch more
Mm.
information than 23andMe will. And I know there's other websites, Prometheus and other ones as well. I think I've done them all, but I really found my fitness to be the easiest one to like
Hmm.
read the benefits and
And for those of you who are
all that.
listening and are like, I have no idea what the heck you guys are talking about, I can say this. There's like really great lifestyle things that you can do to also optimize your hormone detox, right? Eating cruciferous vegetables, eating those beautiful brassicas, those cauliflower, broccoli, artichokes, radishes, kale, Brussels sprouts, those are all incredible ways to actually help your liver process your estrogen down the less inflammatory pathways, down the right pathways. Eating fiber from flax and chia seeds also binds excess estrogens and help pull them out. And pooping every day is also key. I see a lot of women with estrogen dominance coupled with severe constipation. So if you're not pooping every day, your hormones are just sitting inside building up. They're not being detoxed properly. So that's really great. And also, I want to mention, if you are not going to move forth with taking hormones, the diet and the weightlifting, as we mentioned, and there's great supplements I list in my book as well. One of them is maca, which is a root which really supports your adrenal health. And there was a great study I saw. It said 87% of women on maca decrease their hot flashes. So and you can also, there's all sorts of, you could also do vaginal laser therapy to rebuild your collagen too, if you don't want to use it vaginally. So there's absolutely other options for you.
Well, your book, I have it right here. It's so unintimidating, which, just from the length of it, it's written in a very like conversational kind of girlfriend way, which is how you speak, and so it's easy to understand. You have tips in here, so about types of tests to do, the diet stuff, the lifestyle stuff. And you're right about I see so many constipated women out of nowhere. And for me, it was the opposite. As soon as this all happened to me, I had like a horrible like
Mm,
diarrhea issues, and I just like couldn't stop. And once the progesterone came into the picture,
mm.
that's what I needed. So it can be different for everybody. Um, and I know it's scary, and it's scary to self-advocate. I have always been somebody who's like the doctor's worst nightmare, right? Like I have like a PCP who's just like a traditional doctor who's open-minded, but I go to her with like a list of labs I want, a list of questions I have, questioning everything. And it if you aren't like that, you need to get a little bit more like that if you want to have optimal health and really thrive at
Yeah.
this
And,
stage of your life.
think about it this way, right? If you really struggle, I talk a lot about self advocacy. If you really struggle, number one, we all have that extra loudmouth friend or cousin or sister who's like happy to just release their, verbal skills. Yeah,
Cracking on the
crack the
dog.
whip on the doctor, and and in a polite way. We don't want
Yeah.
to be abusive here, but there's always someone who can help. Number two, you can write down your list of questions. Number three, definitely, I mean, my book has like 20 pages of studies in the back, and you can go in and say, hey, you know what? I've done the research. I really think I'm a candidate for hormone replenishment. Like, can you help me? A couple of things are going to happen, right? Number one, there are some doctors that literally hold up their hands and are like, don't even talk to me about hormones. And they'll throw you out of their office because it's an ego trip. That's not your person. Number two, number two, you're going to get doctors who are like, sure, I can prescribe it. And then they prescribe it, but never follow up. So you want to know, like, what are you going to do once you prescribe? Are you going to follow up? Are you going to test my levels? Again, if your practitioner's looking at you and like just sort of not really, you're not really feeling like they are very sure or familiar with the process, choose option three, which is work with a functional medicine practitioner, a nurse practitioner, a prescribing physician, a naturopathic physician who can prescribe, you know, any of those folks who do this day in and day out. They're going to be the ones you want to go to. And yes, it's usually an investment, and it's the best investment that you will make, because the quality of life that you will experience, the improvement is dramatic. And no, it may not be perfect out of the gate. Okay. There's a couple of people on my Instagram page, I'm thinking of in particular, who are always like, I am on hormones and I'm not feeling great. And I'm like, it takes time. It takes 3 to 6 months for your tissues to fully saturate. It took me many months of like breast enlargement and tenderness to figure out like my unique cocktail. I'm no different than you, but be patient with the process. Understand this is a big picture thing. And hormones, I mean, to me, hormones are like the control panel of an airplane, right? It's complicated, and every woman has her own unique patterns and pathways and tolerances. So just give your practitioner time and partner with him or her to say, I feel good on this. I don't feel good on this. Can we retest my levels? And it's really worth the investment, because once you get on a good cocktail, or if you know your baseline that will need to ramp up as you go through menopause, like it's just that much easier when you're with the right practitioner.
Do you often suffer from headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, or sleeplessness? It could be from an electrolyte deficiency. Drinking plain water may not be enough to replenish lost electrolytes, which is especially important for athletes, kids, breastfeeding moms, those who are on a low carb diet, and it can help regulate appetite. Element was created by my co author and good friend Rob Wolf, and is free of artificial ingredients, food coloring, gluten, fillers, and sugar. To put it simply, Element is a drink mix that has everything you need and nothing you don't. Even US Olympic athletes rely on Element, and I personally recommend it to everyone in my nutrition practice. I love the raspberry and citrus flavors, and when you buy via my link, you'll get a free sample pack of a variety of flavors for you to try. Plus, they have a convenient subscription program that makes it easy for you to keep your favorite flavors fully supplied. Head over to sustainabledish.com/LMNT to give it a try. That's sustainabledish.com/LMNT. So Esther, how do people find a practitioner to work with? I know, I know Dr. Deborah Gordon. For those of you who live in Oregon, she is amazing. She's an MD. She's a functional medicine doctor. She has a practice called Northwest Memory Center, where she is just really dedicated to longevity, hormone replacement, and making sure your mind is working great through the end of this. And I think there's just so many angles you can take, right? There's strength, there's bone health, there's brain health. I mean, there's so many different levels of functionality that we need to really pay attention to as we get older. And the values of everyone are going to be a little bit different. For me, it's all that stuff, but how do people connect with the functional medicine doctor? Do you have a resource for them?
I do. I have them oftentimes go to ifm.org. That's the Institute for Functional Medicine. I also like, there's menopause.org, which is the North American Menopause Society. They also have like really good practitioners. And then there's also the search engine, you may have heard of it, called Google. And you can Google functional GYN with your zip code and like see who comes up, or functional MD, and see who comes up there.
Yeah. And as far as like things to look out for, if you're just doing a Google search and, maybe there's a few different options, I'm always nervous about people who overly prescribe supplements and make money off the supplements, and like really have a gigantic list of cocktail that you need to take. So, look at their
Yeah.
Google ratings, make sure there's somebody who, has some like legitimate recommendations.
Yes, and read the testimonials and call the office and say, what kind of hormones do you prescribe? Do you prescribe pellets? Do you prescribe bioidenticals? What's your follow-up process? What results can I expect? And really just don't be afraid to interview them. Medicine's a business. Like, you wouldn't hire an interior designer or contractor without really grilling them about their process. Why would your medical care be any different?
Yeah. Anything else, Esther?
Just know that, like, this is as crazy as this ride can be. Sorry. As crazy as this ride can be, like, there's so much power and wisdom that comes out of it. There really is. Like, to me, I feel like as I age, I lose my filter more. I say what's on my mind, and I really get clear on what I will and won't tolerate in my life anymore. And feeling crummy with menopause, or having hot flashes, or having meno rage, it's just a really great time to use your voice and use it in your favor, and be like, you know what, guys, either to your friends or your family, and be like, you know what, things need to change around here. Like I've been putting myself last for so long, and like I can't do this anymore. I'm really suffering. Often as women, we are relied upon to be the glue for the family, and it's a huge strain. So start to bring in help, ask for help, delegate as much as you can. If you can afford to hire some help here and there, even a college student, like do what you can to get support and delegate. And, sometimes a really great book to read is The Seven Highly Effective Habits of Families. It's by Stephen Covey. And that really helped me get clear on like having family meetings on like Sunday nights. We're like, who's got what going on this week? Who can take the dog, pick up medicine for the dog at the vet? Who's going to do the grocery shopping? Who's going to, and who's going to do the laundry? Just like starting to really delegate, especially as your family and kids get older. Like taking things off your plate, I feel like is so key, and it's a great time in life. It really is.
Yeah, and I see so many of my women friends who are moms doing way too much stuff for the rest of the family. I mean, I send my daughter to the grocery store, she can drive, she eats, I tell my kids if they're, idle and there's groceries to be put away or dishes to be done, they should be up and doing that. And I think there's a tendency to feel like especially as a mom of teenagers, like most of my mom friends are, that we should still like have a function as a mother and do stuff. And no way. Kids need to see their mother practicing self-care. They need to see their mother having a life, having girlfriends, taking classes in the evenings if she wants to. It just, taking care of herself, because that's the kind of model you want for them, not somebody who just, says yes all the time to every single task and never puts herself first.
Well, and by the way, like your kids should know how to do laundry before they go to college. They
Definitely.
should know
How to
how
cook.
to cook a meal. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be beans in a can, but give them the tools they need. Like set them up for success. I mean, I said to my son the other day, I was like, how do you think you're going to handle the responsibility of driving a car when you can't even put your laundry away? Like, ridiculous. But he'll do his laundry, to his credit. He'll do it. God bless those pods, because that is like the best invention on the planet. But, it's, you really do. You need to delegate. And like, we have enabled our kids, and we're all guilty, right? We're like, oh, but I just love them and I want to help them. But guess what? Like School of Hard Knocks wins every time. Like get them to have some basic responsibilities, walking the dog, feeding the dog, things that are life skills, so that when they go out in the real world, they're like, oh, right, I got this. It's not even a question. And it will serve you too. Like I really learned this year to delegate, to hire help in my business. And also just, yeah, keep my boys, like there's nights where I'm like, dinner's on your own, everybody. Good luck. And like, make myself an omelet and go read a book. I don't worry that their meals are not perfect. I rather prioritize my self care at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend a couple other things too on top of the book you recommended, and one is We Should All Be Millionaires.
Oh, the best.
Yes, that I
I think I
recommended
told
to you,
you.
or I don't know
Yeah,
if you
no,
told me
I
or
told you, I was like, Diana, read this book. It was so good.
so good.
So good.
So that's great. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, but I just think women tend to not be financially educated. Especially from the generation you and I grew up in, a lot of my friends just feel really insecure when it comes to money, investing, just knowing about money, right? So
Yeah.
so even if you're not running your own business, I highly recommend that. And then I just the other night watched Call to Courage by Brené Brown, which is a documentary
Mm-hmm.
that's basically just a talk that she did on vulnerability and putting yourself out there and why vulnerability is courage. And she's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. And it really resonated with me. And I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of listeners here.
Yes, Daring Greatly is like one of my all-time favorites, also by Brené Brown.
Mhm.
Yes.
Great. Esther, how can people find you, find the book, and get on your newsletter list, which is really
Yes.
fun to get.
Oh, thank you. So please come join my mailing list, because I have a really amazing live event that I'm doing in the end of February. It's a virtual live event, so you can literally be at home in your pajamas. It's encouraged. So that you go to estherblum.com, EstherBlum.com, and then come hang with me on Instagram at Gorgeous Esther. And there you can find, between those two sites, you will get so many resources and tools. You get supplement recommendations, diet, lifestyle recommendations, hormone discussions. And it's a really great community of very engaged women. So I'm so grateful to really crack open these conversations and really, it's my goal to change the lives of 1 million women. So I got a long way to go, but I'm going to get there.
Well, I support you 100%. It's always fun to have you on the podcast, and I look forward to having you back again in the future. And I don't know, talk more about protein or more about misconceptions around food and women and meat and muscle and, all those great things that you and I both are so passionate about when it comes to women's health.
Let's go, babe. I'm so thankful to be here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks so much for listening today and for following my work. If you believe in making sure people all over the world should have access to nutritious food, please join my mission through my nonprofit, the Global Food Justice Alliance. Visit sustainabledish.com/join and become a sustaining member today. All sustaining members get early access to ad-free podcasts plus free downloads, and you'll be helping get healthy protein like meat, fish, and eggs to food insecure kids. That's sustainabledish.com/join. And thank you.